My name's Bill Schaeffer, and I have another book review. Today's book is The Elements of a Moral Philosophy by James Rachel. This is a great book. I really enjoyed reading it. He has a lot of thoughtful presentations on a number of different moral dilemmas. First, he introduces the moral dilemma, and then he looks at different historical aspects of it, and finally comes to a conclusion. His conclusions are generally a summary of the arguments and a reasonable deduction based on current evidence. The book is easy to read, thoughtful, and well-researched. In Chapter 4, he examines the topic, is morality based on religion? This has been a controversial subject for millennia. Proponents of certain religions believe absolutely it is. However, the author makes convincing arguments that morality is separate from religion and not based on religion at all. In Chapter 5, he discusses psychological egoism, and he examines the topic of altruism. Specifically, is altruism selfish? Many people believe that altruism is just a form of selfishness, that if you're being generous and compassionate, it's only because you wouldn't feel good if you weren't. But the author makes a number of convincing arguments and a convincing analysis that this just is not the case, that altruistic behavior is different than selfish behavior, and that altruism is not selfish. I really like this chapter a lot. In Chapter 11, the author examines the concept of a social contract. This was first advanced by Hobbes, and is kind of the basis for our legal system and our justice system in America, and also the ethics of the business and social order. However, after a lengthy analysis, the author comes to the inescapable conclusion that the philosophy of a social contract is fundamentally flawed, and you cannot build sound arguments on the idea of a social contract. This was a fantastic chapter, very inspirational and very insightful. Shows that philosophy is a continually evolving understanding, and that we need more understanding and more thought in regards to the social contract and social order. In Chapter 12, he examines feminism and the ethics of care. First, he introduces Kohlberg's 6 stages of moral development, and then he reviews feminist writers' objections to Kohlberg's conclusions. In summary, he decides that feminist authors consider morality much more based on personal relationships between the parties involved, whereas traditional understanding of morality is a set of ethical guidelines irrespective of the people involved. This is a fundamental difference of understanding. On the one hand, we have the feminist emphasis on personal, individual relationships and moral responsibility within the relationships, and on the other hand, we have the traditional philosophical understanding of morality as being a set of ethical guidelines. There still has not been a resolution to this controversy, and it needs more research. Finally, in Chapter 13, he discusses ethics of virtue. This was very interesting because it shows how our understanding of moral behavior has changed over time. To the ancient Greeks and in Aristotle's writing, morality was based on virtuous behavior. What are the qualities of an individual character who behaves virtuous and moral? With the advent of Christianity, the emphasis was shifted to moral behavior, following the edicts of God and Jesus. This was fundamentally different in that instead of emphasizing virtuous character, it emphasized following certain behaviors. With the advent of the Renaissance and the decline of the church, then the popular philosophy became a moral behavior based on reason, based on reasonable guidelines for what would make a good society. And now this appears to be breaking down, and the author makes a convincing argument that we should return to the concept of virtue that Aristotle first introduced 2,500 years ago, that a real morality is based on virtuous behavior. He shows the moral dilemmas between conflicting goals and makes a good argument for virtue. In any event, the book, The Elements of Moral Philosophy by James Rachel, is a fascinating book. It's easy to read, it's thoughtful, it's well researched, and he makes good arguments on both sides of the issue, so in each chapter you come to a more fuller understanding of the topic examined. I highly recommend Elements of Moral Philosophy by James Rachel. Thank you, and leave your comments below.